David, it's wild, isn't it? I'm looking at the contract market and it's pricing a 62% chance May inflation comes in hot. But then every headline this morning, like everywhere, is calling the same number easing. And I'm thinking, gas is still $4.55, consumer sentiments at 48.2, the lowest in 80 years. It just doesn't make sense how these two signals are so different about, the same underlying reality.
Amara, that's it. That's exactly it. It's not two views of the same data. It's really two pricing systems reading at entirely different refresh rates. The contract market, it's reading the Cleveland Fed's daily nowcast, which pulls in Brent crude spot prices, weekly retail gasoline data, almost in real time. It's super current.
Oh, so it's just constantly updating minute by minute.
Pretty much, yeah. Whereas the narrative, those headlines, they're reading a survey that updates every 2 weeks and a CPI release that comes out monthly with a lag. So the gap isn't a disagreement on the truth. It's latency, pure and simple.
Latency. Wow. Okay, that makes so much sense. How does this latency actually play out, in something bigger, like economic policy?
Wow. So the inputs for the daily nowcast, those are the ones tied to the actual price level then, like Brent crude, weekly retail gasoline, the CPI gasoline component, real physical flow signals.
Exactly, yeah. They reflect what's happening at the pump, which reflects the refinery, which reflects the wellhead. There's this whole chain of physical constraints, from the Strait of Hormuz right to the gas station. And the price level just transmit through, whether the Fed recognizes it or not. Crude's up 40% since the Iran war started. Gas is still $4.55 a gallon. The Strait is still constrained.
So if the Strait of Hormuz is still constrained, that really means this whole supply-side parameter isn't, reversing at all, does it?
That's it. And here's what gets totally lost in all the talk about rate cuts. Monetary policy can reduce demand, but it absolutely cannot reduce the cost of producing something under physical constraint. The Fed's dual mandate, it's for inflation from demand-side overheating, but the inflation we have right now, it's from a supply-side cost shock. Their optimization function is, misspecified.
Misspecified, meaning the controller is essentially reading the wrong variable for the actual problem we're facing?
Exactly. If you tighten on a supply shock, you just compress demand without reducing the cost. You get the same price level with lower output. You produce stagflation, not disinflation. And the thing is, the Fed knows this. The dissent rate at the April 29th meeting, that was the institutional admission of this very problem.
8-4. That was the most divided FOMC since October 1992. Hammack, Kashkari, Logan, they dissented on the language, wouldn't sign off on easing bias wording. And then Moran dissented on the rate itself, wanting a 25 basis point cut. That's a massive split with the chair holding center.
Okay, David, here's what's really bothering me. The contract's at 0.62, narrative probability 0.40. The Cleveland Fed nowcast says 3.89%. The price level says persistence. The Fed's dissent rate says the consensus has fractured. Yet this morning, headlines are still saying inflation expectations are easing. Why does the headline just not move?
Because, Amara, the headline's reading a different signal at a different speed. And the cognitive cost of switching signals, for media or the public, it's just higher than staying with the slow one. The Michigan sentiment gives a clean headline. The daily nowcast requires reading methodology. There's a switching cost that keeps the narrative anchored.
Yeah, but there's a second layer, right? The same households with sentiment at 48.2, a historic low, lower than 2008, lower than 2020 lockdowns. Those are the ones whose discretionary spending is contracting. 52% of non-equity holders cite high prices as a drag. The wedge widens.
And that Michigan reading at 48.2, it represents a population that has lived through all those events, reporting worse sentiment now. That's not noise. That's the household budget recognizing what the survey is asking. The wallet registers price level continuously. The survey registers expectation, not the same variable.
So, if I'm getting this right, the slow sentiment data feeds the FOMC's policy language and treasury repricing. The fast nowcast feeds the contract market. And then the household, the household just sits right there, that intersection, taking it all in.
Yeah, exactly. The household is like the externality, Amara. In environmental terms, the optimization is being run on a function that simply doesn't include the household budget as a decision variable. The Fed's decision variables are unemployment, core PCE, core CPI, all of which look acceptable for their function right now. The household experience, that's the externalized cost.
Which is why the contract market then, which just prices the outcome regardless of how it got there, is the signal that actually registers what the optimization function, externalized in the first place.
Absolutely. Capital reads consequence. Narrative reads input. It's a huge difference.
And I've seen this structural pattern across contracts. CPI May 26, capital's above narrative, a 22-point gap. On the hantavirus contract, capital is below narrative, pricing successful containment despite deaths. So capital prices the structural truth, narrative the emotional. And then for things like the AI data security contract, where there's no clear clock, the price just degenerates towards the middle.
So here's where this all lands at the household level, Amara. This is what the Fed's optimization function just externalizes. The FOMC's June meeting falls between the May CPI print on June 10th and, no late June print. The dot plot will only register against May data. If May prints at or above 3.9%, the median dot moves toward 0 cuts in 2026. If it prints below, it supports a single 25 basis point cut. Either way, the household, especially the bottom 90%, just keeps doing spending triage. Real income expectations have been declining. And the wallet will continue registering that price level, whether or not the Fed cuts, won't it?
Exactly. When that May print comes out on June 10th, and the physical inputs say it'll confirm the market's read because crude's up and the strait hasn't reopened, the FOMC faces a choice its dual mandate can't resolve. Labor's stable, but the price level sustained by supply-side parameters monetary policy can't reach. They'll likely do a rate hold. Sentiment will lower, the reaction function will face the same ill-defined input. By Q3, real income for the bottom 90% will have eroded more. The equity holder net worth will keep diverging upward. That wedge, Amara, it just widens. And that widening wedge, that's what makes political pressure on Fed independence structural.
So it sounds like the longer this gap between the contract market and the headline holds, the more institutional language just has to bend to catch up. Or, the language stays put, the contract stays put, and the household just keeps absorbing what the optimization totally externalized. It's quite a position for everyone, isn't it? So, for our listeners to really understand this, what should they be watching for, specifically? Okay, so watch this. Tuesday, May 12th, 8:30 a.m. Eastern, the Bureau of Labor Statistics releases April CPI. 30 seconds later, the contract reprices. Watch for 2 thresholds. If CPI May 26 trades above 0.70 between May 12th and the May CPI release on June 10th, that's the persistence confirmation threshold. The market's read holds, the headline narrative breaks, and the June FOMC dot plot moves towards 0 cuts. If it trades below 0.55, that's the entry threshold. The narrative-laid path opens. Either way, the contract will know 32 days before the BLS does. The headline will know last. Watch what trades, watch when, and crucially, watch which side of the gap the next descent comes from at the June 16th-17th meeting. Because that descent rate will tell you what the next chair inherits before the first vote is even cast.
David, this has been an absolutely crucial deep dive. Understanding these different signal speeds, this latency between what capital prices and what headlines report, it clarifies so much about the economic landscape. Our listeners now have a clear roadmap for what to observe.
Indeed, Amara. The core takeaway remains that structural forces are at play, forces that monetary policy alone cannot resolve.
Watching those CPI May 26 thresholds isn't just about market dynamics, it's about discerning the true state of the economy versus its official narrative.
Precisely. It's about seeing beyond the immediate, feeling the pulse of what truly moves the needle. And with that, dear listeners, we wrap up another enlightening session. The journey to economic clarity continues, and we're so thrilled to have you with us. Thank you so much for watching and listening. If you found this discussion insightful, please remember to like this video, comment with your thoughts, share it with your network, and of course, subscribe to help our community grow. We truly appreciate your support.